It was supposed to be just another quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind Ruth Langsford had always cherished. The warm hum of the oven, the soft patter of rain on the kitchen window, and the comforting rhythm of chopping vegetables. But that day, something felt different. Something lingered in the air. Not quite sadness, not quite peace, just a heavy kind of silence that only Ruth seemed to understand. She stood in her spacious kitchen, surrounded by familiar things, her favorite blue apron, the neatly arranged spice jars, the smell of rosemary and roasted garlic wafting through the air. But as she stirred the pot in front of her, her eyes shimmered with quiet tears. This wasn't just another recipe for her show or another comforting dinner for two. This meal, made from only 6 simple ingredients, carried a story that had been sitting in her heart for months. The dish itself was humble: roasted chicken thighs with lemon, honey, garlic, olive oil, fresh thyme, and sea salt. Nothing fancy, nothing that would impress a critic. But it was the recipe Eamon Holmes had once called the best thing Ruth's ever cooked. It had been his favorite comfort food during long, difficult days, the kind of dish that brought warmth to their home, even when the world outside felt cold. She smiled faintly as she drizzled honey over the chicken, remembering his teasing voice. "You could open a restaurant with this, love, if you ever get tired of television." Those words echoed now like a memory from another life. The kitchen, once full of laughter, now felt too big. The table, once set for two, seemed painfully empty. It had been weeks since Eamon's recent health setback. He was recovering, slowly, bravely, but the fear that had gripped Ruth that night hadn't left her. She had seen him fragile, fighting to stay strong even when his body betrayed him. And that night, sitting by his hospital bed, she had promised herself that when he came home, she would make his favorite meal again, not for television, not for an audience, but for love. As the chicken sizzled, the smell filled the air like a warm hug. Ruth wiped her eyes quickly and reached for the lemon, slicing it into thin rounds. "He'll like that," she whispered to herself, as if saying it would make it true. Each ingredient she added wasn't just flavor, it was memory. The honey for his sweet tooth, the thyme for their garden where he used to tease her about never watering the herbs, the garlic because he always said, "No proper meal starts without it." But there was something more behind those tears, something deeper. Cooking had always been Ruth's love language. It was how she said, "I care," how she said, "I'm still here." And that day, as she carefully arranged the roasted chicken on a plate, it became her quiet way of saying, "I'm grateful." She looked at the clock. It was nearly time. The sound of slow footsteps in the hallway made her heart race. Eamon appeared, leaning gently on his walking stick, his familiar smile returning piece by piece. "Something smells good," he said, his voice still weak but full of warmth. Ruth turned, her eyes softening. "6 ingredients," she said, smiling through her tears. That's all it took. He looked at the table, then at her, and chuckled. "You're sure there's no secret 7th? Love, maybe?" Ruth laughed, the first genuine laugh she'd had in days. Maybe that's the main one. As they sat together, sharing the meal, the kitchen once again filled with laughter. Quiet, tired, but real. Eamon took a bite, closed his eyes, and nodded approvingly. "Still the best thing you've ever made," he said softly. Ruth reached across the table and held his hand, her thumb tracing the lines on his skin. "I just wanted to remind us both that "Some things never change," she whispered. For a long moment, they sat there in silence, the clinkle of cutlery being the only sound between them. Outside, the rain eased, and the last bit of sunlight peeked through the clouds, casting a golden glow across the kitchen. That 6-ingredient meal wasn't just food. It was healing. It was memory and hope served on a plate. It was proof that even after the hardest storms, love could still simmer gently, filling the air with warmth and the heart with quiet gratitude. Later that evening, Ruth posted a photo of the dish on Instagram with a simple caption: 6 ingredients, 1,000 memories. Always cook with love. Within minutes, fans flooded the comments with hearts and kind words, many saying they'd try making the same dish for someone they love. But what they didn't know was that for Ruth, it wasn't just a recipe. It was a reminder that love doesn't always need grand gestures. Sometimes it's just a plate of food, a shared moment, and tears that fall softly in the kitchen, telling a story no camera ever could.